Good evening, Mayor and members of Council. So this evening I'm presenting the financial statements through the third quarter, June 30th, and we only have about 6 weeks left in our fiscal year, which is hard to believe. So it's flown by. So tonight we'll start off with the general fund like we typically do. Balance sheet highlights, the cash balance is up $1.5 million compared to last year. That is made up of revenues from last year, revenues over expenditures through this point in the same time last year, about $600,000. It also includes some revenues more than last year of $9.5 million for the current year, and expenditures are more than last year, $8.3 million. I'm going to talk about those in more detail next. And then it's just normal fluctuations in our current assets and liabilities that affect that cash balance at this point in the year. This chart is a picture of the general fund revenues, budget versus actual. It shows you how much of the revenues have come in through the June 30th time period. Property tax, the percent collected on our property tax is 97.5% as compared to 98.1% last year at this time. As you know, most of our property tax revenues come in before the deadline of February 1st. Our sales tax revenues are trending higher. They're up approximately $429,000 year to date, so that's good news for good retail activity going on in the city. Our fines and forfeitures are up compared to last year, about $251,000. This is mostly due to traffic fine activity. And then our investment income, you can see it's really off the chart. It's about 36% above budget at this point, so that's good news. The city's finally getting some good returns on our investments now that the interest rates are better. Charges for services is more than last year and tracking according to budget. That is due to the increase in the solid waste fee this year, along with we had an increase in our ambulance fees as of January 1, and then some increases in our public works inspection fees as of January 1. And then all other revenues are really comparable to the prior year and according to budget. Our general fund expenditures, I'd like to show you this chart. This shows the spending in relation to where we are in the year. So June, of course, is 75% of the year. You can see that most areas are at or below 75%. General government is tracking slightly higher, and this is due to some changes that we made as far as where employees are recorded for that new cost allocation plan, and then that is trued up with the amended budget adjustment that we made to reflect those changes. So that'll be right on target before we end the fiscal year. Planning and development is under the 75% mark, and that is due to a couple of vacant positions they had, and one of those positions wasn't actually filled until just recently in June. Neighborhood services is also below significantly. That's really due to the timing of the activity in that area, the abatement activity, which happens later in the spring, summer, and fall. And then they did have one vacant position in the first part of the fiscal year as well. And we always mention the non-departmental. This is our bond principal and interest payments. The principals are due in March, so that puts the spending ahead of the budget being 75%, but that levels out throughout the rest of the year. So that is the general fund. The 4B Quality of Life Fund, here, it's mostly major projects that are taking place, so the cash balance is up $500,000, and the project spending here takes place over multiple years, so that can fluctuate based on the project activity. The revenue highlights, if you were to look at your financials, which I will mention, your packets included the actual financial statements and the overview, and those are also available on the city's website. The intergovernmental revenue had a negative balance, and that's just due to the timing of drawdown requests being processed to reimburse the city. And then the other revenue had a large reimbursement from Dallas County, and that was for the Cyene Road project. That was to the tune of about $2.4 million, their participation in that, so that was good. You can see the expenditure highlights. These are the projects that have, the main projects where the spending has taken place this year. Town East Boulevard, major construction there. Thomason Square, Cyene Road, of course, for the Ashley development out there, and then Military Parkway Trail. In the Parks and Rec area, it's operations, highway corridor maintenance, and Westlake Tennis Center. Next, we'll look at the Water Sewer Fund. Here, we have an increase in working capital over the prior year of $3.8 million. The majority of that is really the results of last year's activity, but there is an increase in revenues this year of $1.2 million, and that's related to the rate increase. and that helps offset the expenditures. This is offset this year by a reduction in consumption, and I'm going to show you that chart next. But we are down about 9.5% in our consumption in the water sewer fund year to date, and I'll talk about that more in a second. Our investment income is up here as well by about $387,000, but you can see our revenues are up $1.2 million, our expenditures are up $4.2 million, and that's due to the increases from North Texas Municipal Water District. We had about a 5% rate increase on the water rates and about a 14% increase on the cost of sewer charges from the district. So here, and then of course our debt service just follows the debt service requirements. So let me show you the consumption chart. We've talked about this already for the first 2 quarters. This is through the third quarter. The first quarter, our consumption was down 9.1%. Second quarter, we were down 5.4%. And in the third quarter, we were down 12.9%. You can see the big difference here in June. And that is due to the significant amount of rain that we've received. And it's making an impact on our water sewer fund. So I talked last quarter that we have to monitor this to year end. Usually we carry a net loss through the third quarter. It's not unusual. And then our heavier consumption months are the summer, of course, when everybody's watering and trying to keep their grass green. Last year, and typically our net loss through the third quarter last year was $2.5 million. And we turn that around, we get to year end, and we met our budget last year. This year through third quarter, we have a net loss of $5.5 million. So we're watching this very closely. It could impact the budget here. Fortunately, our water sewer fund is healthy. We've positioned ourselves well to stabilize our rates, to get our infrastructure back to the level where it needs to be, infrastructure maintenance. But we really are going to we could possibly take a hit this year, but we're monitoring it. We just need to tell everybody to please water their yards tremendously over the next 6 weeks. But we are tracking that and keeping an eye on it before we get to year end. I just want to make you aware of that. In the drainage fund, this fund is very healthy. We have an increase in working capital of about $356,000. Our revenues are increased over the prior year about 3.1%. Our expenditures are tracking a little bit less. And then you can see we've transferred $1.8 million toward the scheduled projects here, which include Townies Boulevard drainage, the Palos Verde erosion control, the big South Mesquite Creek drainage project that you see going on over there by North Mesquite High, and then some other smaller drainage projects. So this fund is in good shape. The airport fund, here we have an increase over last year in working capital of $81,000. Our hangar rentals increased slightly by 9.2%. Now remember, in the first quarter, they had the ramp project and the runway was shut down to the larger aircrafts. So our fuel sales are down year to date about $225,000, and that was due to that project. Their lease receipts are up by about $10,000, but it's quite an increase there due to availability. On the expenditure side, the fuel costs are down, in relation to the decreased sales. But they're able to maintain a profit margin of over 30%. So that's the key. If sales are down, your expenditures are going to be down in relation to that. But they're doing a good job managing that profit margin. Overall expenses are down about $98,000. They do have a net loss year to date through June. But at this point, it looks like they're tracking to make a net income and cover their expenses for the year for the airport, even though they were shut down in that first quarter. I always like to show you the fuel gallons sold. This is both the corporate and the recreational flying. So they're down year to date about 24% less, but you can see that first quarter was quite a bit down due to and then this one is the Jet A. Jet A is the corporate. They were a lot more affected by the runway being closed. Then this one, the Avgas, is the recreational. They weren't affected as much, but the consumption there is down slightly at 11%. So that's the airport. The golf course is another fund that's being hit hard by the heavy rains. So here, the working capital, you see a decrease over the prior year of $42,000. Overall revenues are down 10%, and the year-to-date rounds of golf are down 14%. And that is because we've had 44 rain days that have basically, people aren't going to golf in the rain. October through June, 44 days, where last year, the entire fiscal year, they had 26 rain days. So you can see the impact on the operation here. Now, their overall expenditures are down. They're trying to do a good job minimizing those expenditures. And of course, they're not spending as much on their water because they don't have to water with all the rain we've had. They have a net loss year-to-date of about $40,000. Last year at this point, about $22,000. They're coming into their season, the end of summer and going into the last few weeks of the year. Hopefully they'll have some good golfing activity to maybe bring this around to a break even. That's what we could hope for. This chart shows you the rounds of golf, and you can see the effect of the rain all year long. And then June, they really surpassed it a little bit on that chart there for June. Next is the Group Medical Insurance Fund, and this is the fund where we have the large negative fund balance that we're working on. And we'll have good news to report on this. The city's contributions were increased this year as planned in the budget, so they're ahead of last year by about $590,000. The life, dental, and vision contributions are up, but in relation to the expenses, that's kind of a wash. We had a large stop-loss reimbursement that we received due to some large claims in the first quarter. We talked about that before. So otherwise, the revenues are on track with budget. Our health claims are about $587,000 more year-to-date, but you take away that stop-loss reimbursement, and they're actually less than last year. And same with our pharmaceutical cost. We're doing very well with our Blue Cross Blue Shield contract. It's helped us tremendously on our pharmaceutical cost. And kudos to our HR director doing a great job to secure that contract again. Net income year-to-date, we have net income of $670,000. So we're just hoping that we don't have any major claims over the next, really from now until the middle of December, we need no major claims if at all possible. We're trying to keep everybody healthy. So it would be tremendous if we could make a big impact on that negative fund balance.
That was going to be my question, City Manager, or you would, if we come in with a net income, it will go to that.
Absolutely.
To that negative balance.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. This chart just shows you those claims, but again, remember, the green line is this year, but that large stop-loss reimbursement came in to kind of minimize the effect of that on the financials. The general liability fund here, our revenues are comparable to last year. We increased the rates to the departments a year and a half ago. This year we had no rate increase. Now our legal expenses are down, but our workers' comp claims are tracking ahead of the budget. We're 75%, June is 75% of the year, and we're tracking about 89%. This is really due to some additional workers' comp incidents related to police and fire events that have taken place this year. So we're kind of monitoring this as well. Our general liability claims are on track. And other expenses, this is really related to repairs to damaged city property. We have a net loss year-to-date in this fund of $110,000. You may recall at amended budget, I mentioned that we're prepared to make an additional transfer into this fund of $350,000, basically from the Capital Projects Reserve Fund if we need to. We're going to monitor to the end of the year. Hopefully, it'll come out okay and we'll have a break even. We have a small negative fund balance here that we're still working on. So, but if you remember, our new reserve policy and funding policy for the internal service funds was that we are going to make sure that they're fully funded each year to cover the expenses incurred. We're prepared to do that if we need to, but hopefully we won't need that full $350,000. And our last fund is the Hotel Occupancy Tax Fund. Here, our year-to-date revenues are $329,000 more than the prior year, and this is really due to the collection of really one hotel that was severely delinquent. So we did our audit with the firm that we hired to do the audit over the last few years, and the hotel finally came to justice and made their payment, and that came in June. So that was really the reason there. The expenditures here are on track with budget, and according to the revenues coming in, they do have a net income year-to-date of $448,000. And the next chart kind of shows you, and I did indicate on this chart that without that delinquent hotel occupancy tax payment, the revenues would have been more in line with what we've been seeing. So just to note that. So with that, I would answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Moll? I guess not. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.